Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast. And with the start of high school football season on Friday, we welcome in my old boss and good friend, Todd Freed, who hosts H-Town High School Sports on AT&T Sportsnet and the CW. And Todd, I want to say you've been hosting a high school sports show in Houston for, is it 21 years now?
Technically, it's 22. Of course, I started when I was in high school. So, that's how young I am. Give or take. Okay, maybe I was just out of high school. So we started, as you know, you're with me most of the way on High School Sports Live on Channel 55, The Tube. And then I went on to High School Sports Zone that was 10 years at The Tube, for 10 years at Channel 57, The Cube. So I went from The Tube to The Cube. And then almost 2 years ago, I went independent with H-Town High School Sports. And as you mentioned, the show itself airs Saturdays at 10 p.m. on CW 39, and then Monday through Thursday, generally around 5:30 on AT&T Sportsnet. So that's the history, 22 years and going strong.
And I'm gonna remind everybody one more time towards the end the show times in case you want to tune in every week, and you definitely want to do that. And in the NFL draft just a few months ago, Todd, I want to say there were 12 Houston area kids drafted and then several more undrafted, but in NFL camps. The Texans alone drafted 3 guys. I think if you're a Texan fan, you know Atascocita's Kenyon Green, Stafford's Jalen Petrie, and Cy-Fair's Austin DeCulis. If you can, maybe drop some more names on us, because there's a lot of them.
Well, one thing that's interesting, the 3 you mentioned, of course, 3 local guys going to the Texans, and that's pretty amazing right there. And Klein Collins had 2 guys drafted. How many high schools have 2 players drafted? That Isaiah Spiller, who of course went to A&M, and then Cameron Good, linebacker for Klein Collins. He was picked, and I believe what round was that? He was picked fairly early. He was he was 7th round. Isaiah went in the 4th round to the Chargers. So you had 12 guys from Houston, as you mentioned. Several guys who signed as free agents, like Garrett King, who the great player from Manville, then U of H, Miami. Then he signed with New England. And so you had a lot of really great players who didn't even get drafted, who also suit up for NFL teams as well. So a dozen players. Texas led the way, I think, with 33 or something like that, and 12 of them coming from the Houston area. So that's not bad at all.
Yeah, and I think Galveston Ball, you talk about the 2 guys from Klein Collins, Ball had a guy drafted and 1 non-drafted, brothers, the McCullum brothers, Zion and Tristan.
Zion McCullum went in the 5th round, and his brother. And then you had a guy from LaPorte, Terrell Bernard. And then you had Otito Ogunaya. I remember him from high school, big defensive lineman. He got drafted. He's from Katy Taylor, went to USC. And Mike Woods, a great wide receiver from Magnolia, went to OU. He got picked in the 6th round. And so, it's really a great list of players.
Yeah, and a couple of guys from Katy. I don't know if they were drafted, but Hayden Howerton, Ryder Anderson. You got Talon Humphrey from Klein Oak, Leon O'Neill from Cy Springs, Jaden Peavy from Baylor. I mean, and like I said, not all of them drafted, but I mean, to have all of these different guys in NFL camp, it's unreal. Houston just does it over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to history, it just goes on, and it never ceases to amaze us. But this year's crop was as good as it gets, and we got 3 of them here in Houston, so that's pretty good.
You got a favorite memory or two, maybe a game from the last couple of decades covering high school? I mean, you've seen Vince Young, Ed Oliver, Derek Carr, Mike Evans, Andrew Luck, and on and on and on and on.
I mean, I've got a lot of memories. So you can start, probably the most recent one, one of the most famous plays in Texas State football history was just 3 years ago, North Shore, the Hail Mary, Demetrius Davis to AJ Carter. Of course, that was in Dallas as North Shore won the state championship. But if we go back, Vince Young, Of course, back then he was known as Vincent Young. And the best memory I have of him was that, and we've seen it, and you've seen the highlights of that game against North Shore, one of the greatest high school football games ever in the playoffs. I believe it was the regional finals. And that has to be one of the more incredible games you'll ever see. And that was Vincent Young against North Shore. And somehow he pulled that game. Of course, we all know the Sam McGuffey play, the play seen around the world back in 2007, the hurdle that we had on High School Sports Live exclusively. And that was kind of lucky. That was kind of a funny story. And you were there, Robert. Remember Owen, our photographer, he went to the Cy-Fair game. I think they were playing Cy Creek, but I don't remember for sure. And he got there, and it was like 35-0. Cy-Fair was leading at halftime, and he called. He says, "Well, what do I do?" I said, "I'll just stay, so you'll get something while you're there." And then, sure enough, in that third quarter was that famous hurdle where Sam McGuffey steps on the guy's back and goes in for the touchdown. That's one of the most viral plays probably ever in Texas high school football. So, I mean, you can go on and on. From probably the most memorable day doubleheader was 2003, and that was at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. And you had Katy playing. Katy was the underdog playing South Lake Carroll, and then you had Lamarck playing Benton Ryan, class 5A and 4. I think it was still called 5A back then. 5A and 4A state championship games, and Katy put together an incredible comeback and won it in the final 2 minutes. And then Lamarck, triple overtime, won that game. I think Rashad Bobineau was the famous linebacker for Lamarck. So that was one of the most incredible days back in 2003. And a week earlier, that same year, North Shore had defeated the Woodlands in an all Greater Houston state championship. That was Division I. That was with Robert Reed. And so that week was probably among the biggest memories of all time.
Yeah, you talk about Robert Reed, and my favorite memory of just football in general over the last 20 years was after Robert Reed won the national championship at Rice Stadium. Maybe the last great moment at Rice Stadium, you could say in some ways. Sorry about that, Rice Owls fans, but Robert Reed wins the championship, and I go down on the field, and as they're celebrating, everybody stops, and the entire North Shore team and fans start singing "Happy Birthday" because it was Robert Reed's birthday when they won the national championship. And you talk about the Vince Young play or that game, and I want to say that's the last great sporting event in the Houston Astrodome was that Vince Young game against North Shore.
You may be right. You may be right. It probably is. And that game had everything. I remember the photographer, Vince Young, broke free on a 60-yard touchdown run and goes through the end zone and then right into the photographer. Who was the photographer? Do you remember?
I think it was Raymond. I think it was Raymond over at Channel 26. He broke open, and then he broke Raymond open, I think, in the end zone.
He leveled them. That was amazing. But I mean, there's just so many games and memories you just don't think of. I mean, not a secondary level. Here in Houston in 2015 at I guess it was called Reliance Stadium at the time, you had North Shore and Katy both winning state championship games in a doubleheader. Those games were supposed to be played in Dallas like they are every year. And I have a bone to pick with that. Doesn't have to be that way every year, does it? But I think the Cowboys had inadvertently or mistakenly or unknowingly, whatever, scheduled a game that Saturday. Was during the holidays, so they had to move the championships to Houston, and it worked out great for us because we had North Shore and I believe Lake Travis, and then Katy and Austin Westlake, and so you had North Shore, and that was the beginning of the resurgence. Not that North Shore ever dropped off, but the beginning of their newfound resurgence They've won, 4 state championships since 2015, 3 of the last 4 years. So, which is really incredible on the highest level, 6A Division One. That was an awesome memory as well. Not that long ago, 2015.
Yeah, and I just I'm just curious from your perspective. I mean, you've seen Katy and North Shore and the success that they've had over the years that's just been unbelievable. What do you make of it? How are they? I mean, I know you get this question a lot, but how are Katy and North Shore doing this every year? I think Katy's won 21, or they had 21 straight 10-win seasons and 7 state titles since 2000.
Yeah, that's not bad. Well, I think it begins with coaching, coaching, coaching. They have great coaches and they don't go anywhere. I mean, how long has Gary Joseph been there? He was the defensive coordinator when they won the 2003 state championship. That was Mike Johnston's legendary coach as well last year. He's been the head coach ever since. So great coaching stuff, a great system. And Katy, I mean, they're playing Katy offenses when they're in 6th grade. It all comes together. And I think one thing that's helped, and I could be a little off on this, Katy is, a lot of the new schools they built haven't invaded too much of their space. We have so many new high schools where this guy would have gone to this guy's high school, this one would have gone to this one, and they've kind of kept their own area. And so I think that's helped as well. You had Pato come in recently, and they won state just last year, and just getting off base there. That's going to be a great game, Pato and Katy, in a couple of months. But North Shore, same thing. John, you had David Amon who built that program, and then the year he left, John Kay comes in and wins state in 2015, and North Shore is a very large school with so many great athletes, and they're not building new high schools anywhere around there. So you've got all those great players coming up, and they're all going into North Shore. So I think that's helped. So I think it's just coaching and obviously talent, but having that setup, it all falls in place.
Yeah, it's real interesting because, North Shore hasn't had the other schools coming in poaching their talent. So you understand it a little bit. Katy, it's a lot more miraculous because we've seen so many schools since you and I have even started that have been built out in Katy, and they take talent here or there, but Katy just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling right along. And right now I saw a preseason national poll, North Shore ranked 8th, Katy ranked 55th. It's the same old for those two schools, but let's preview the season just a bit. And who should we watch for besides those two schools? Who else in the Houston area are you looking at?
Well, you've got in the state top 10 or top 12, you got 4 teams from Houston. That's not the only ones to look out for. North Shore is preseason number 2 in Texas, only because Austin Westlake is number 1. And then you've got Katy, I believe, is preseason 5. The Westfield Mustangs, that's a team, they're for people who don't know how it's divided up, you've got most of Houston schools are region 3, but a lot of the schools out north, Spring, Klein, the Woodlands, Conroe area are region 2. So they go a different route in the playoffs. A lot of times that route's pretty tough. But so Westfield, preseason top 10, and then right outside the top 10, you have a Atascocita. Bridgepoint out of Fort Bend, Missouri City, they had a great year last year. They have loads of talent, including Andy Kalu's son, BK Kalu. There's just a lot of great players a lot of NFL retired guys who live in that area, and you have great lineage of players out there in that Ridgepoint, Missouri City area. Dickinson, as always, the Gulf Coast talent out there, and they'll have a great team. And so those are some of the teams to watch out. 6A, 5A, your 1-2 punch is Crosby and Fort Bend Marshall. And interestingly enough, they're going to play on the second week of the season on Thursday night. Actually, I'll be doing the play-by-play on that game. It'll be on AT&T Sportsnet next Thursday. So in 5A, watch out for those teams, Crosby and Fort Bend Marshall. Crosby has a tremendous quarterback, Siren Miles, and maybe one of the top 2-3 quarterbacks in Houston.
Yeah, Crosby, they are always a blast to watch. So much fun. Their offense is up and down. The games are up and down. I've been to a lot of Crosby games over the years. Love watching the Cougars. Todd, if you're not a fan of a particular school, but you want to see a future college or NFL star, or you're like, I just want to see just an incredible somebody I could tell my kids about in a few years. Who should you go see?
Well, I would recommend going to this Thursday's game between the Woodlands and North Shore. Uh, what a season opener. The Woodlands quarterback, Mabry Metallier, he's a junior now. As a freshman, he already looked like Trevor Lawrence. He's 6'5", 220 pounds, got the long, streaking blonde hair. And that is one guy you want to go watch. And then North Shore's quarterback, Caleb Bailey, as a freshman last year, all he did was lead his team to the 6A Division I state championship. So he's one of the really up and coming players. So I like those guys a lot. Not to harp on Katy, Seth Davis, their running back, he rushed for, I believe, 2,400 yards last season. He has over 4,000 yards rushing. He has a chance to become the all-time leading rusher in the history of Katy football. There's a quarterback at Willis High School, of all schools, and I believe he's the only 5-star quarterback in Houston, DJ Lagway, and he's ranked the #1 dual threat junior quarterback in the country. And so that'll be something when Willis plays the Woodlands to see those two quarterbacks, because they are in the same district. There's a wide receiver at Langham Creek, Jaquiz Petaway. He's one of the top wide receivers in the country as well. So, I mean, those are some of the guys I would keep an eye out for.
Yeah,
And
UT
the guy
has
Crosby, the quarterback, Siren Miles, who I mentioned earlier, he's a guy to watch out for. I also like Zion Brown, the quarterback at Atascocita. Atascocita and Dickinson play on Thursday night to open the season.
Yeah, and also I guess if you look at it, besides Petaway, he's a UT commit. There are two other UT commits for next year. El Campo running back Ruben Owens is top 20 nationally.
I was about to say Ruben. He was the #1. He was a national player of the year last year. He's not going to Texas, though. He changed his commitment. Yeah, I believe. Is he going to Louisville? Or is it Mississippi State? I'll tell you right now, he's going to Louisville. Yeah, he changed his commitment to Louisville. Now that could change again, but yeah, he's out of El Campo, so it's a good haul if you want to go see him play. But El Campo got a good 100 miles from there. But they'll come in. They play Stafford in the same district, although I think the Stafford game this year is at El Campo, but that's another great player to watch out for.
The third Longhorn commit, you might correct me because he might have, these guys changed their mind like they changed clothes, but you got Eisenhower wide receiver Ryan Niblet. Is he still going? He's top 100 guy maybe, or around 100 nationally?
Yeah. I don't know if he's changed his commitment, but I think he's still with Texas. And so then we can go on and on. There's so many, just so many guys all over. And you can go to, even a school like Stratford, you don't think about football with them. They have got so much talent this year. They got a tight end named Hawkins Pauly, 6'4", 220. He's going to Baylor. Their quarterback, who's the son of the head coach, Todd Rankin, Nash Rankin, he's put up some huge numbers. And that's a fun team to go out and watch. Is the Stratford Spartans right down the road at Tully Stadium in Spring Branch. So you can just keep going all over the place and find guys to watch out for.
Yeah, keep an eye also for Klein Forest wide receiver Jelani Watkins. He's another highly ranked guy nationally. The list goes on. And Todd, since you and I've been doing this, these high school stadiums, you talk about changing. It seems like every year there's a new stadium that looks like a college stadium that's built somewhere in the Houston area.
I think we have to change the rankings instead of teams to stadiums. You know, top 10, and you could have a pretty good debate. Maybe we don't get up to 10, but top 6 or 7, because one of the original beauties, I mean, which is still one of the beauties, is the Cy-Fair FCU Stadium Berry Center in Cyprus. I mean, that's not a new stadium, but that thing, it looks like a college stadium. I mean, the way it's built, the architecture. But then you look at all the new stadiums. We've all heard a lot about Legacy Stadium in Katy, and that is impressive. But it just Freedom Field in Alvin ISD. That is an outstanding stadium. It rivals any of them, and it's about 4 years old. C.E. King, their stadium. You've been to that one, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
That is something. Tomball just built the most gorgeous stadium you're ever going to see off of the Grand Parkway. I went to the playoff game last year where Tomball defeated Bridgeland, and that stadium is a beauty. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few others. The new Spring ISD Stadium, Planet Ford is nice, and then there's just so many great stadiums. They seat anywhere from 10 to 12 to 14,000, but the amenities, they'll have a big student center or it's really something. We do need to do the rankings on stadiums, and you can get some hot debate right there.
That Tomball Stadium, I was there for its big grand opening, and they had a halftime fireworks show that rivaled anything that you would have seen on July 4th. I think it must have gone on for 15 or 20 minutes with the finale and the whole thing. And it was unbelievable. I want to take you away from football for just a bit before we close things out, because there's a non-football story that just unreal. Is you and I did a story back in the day on Brittney Griner when she was just this shy young freshman at Nimitz High School, but already dunking basketballs, and very frustrated and upset about what's happened in Russia for her. Do you remember much about meeting Brittney for that first time and seeing her do what she did? Because it's indelible, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, she was just a woman among girls, I guess you could say. She was a phenomenal. She was very quiet. And I remember we had our awards at the TV station, which we called the Slammies. And she was obviously our it was our basketball awards, the TV show we did. And she was our girls basketball player of the year, but she was very shy, and her family wanted to protect her. So when we did her award, we kind of had to we had to clear out the studio so there wouldn't be a lot of distraction. She was very nice, and it's mind-boggling that she's stuck in that jail there in Russia for nothing, obviously. So hopefully that will resolve itself soon. But no, I just remember her being a great player. And Nimitz, I went to go video a boys basketball game there last year, and I hadn't been to the gym, I don't think, since interviewing Brittney or one of her games. And the gym hasn't changed. It's just this old little gym in back of the high school, and it's hard to believe that there's so much tradition and greatness that comes out of that little gym. And I don't remember if there were any banners in recognition of Brittney up there, but just started there at that little gym, and we'll see what happens, and hopefully they get her out of there soon.
Yeah, basketball, I mean, you and I have covered, well, I was a little before my time, but between you and I, we've covered TJ Ford and Emeka Okafor and Jimmy Butler. And I mean, just that list is just is amazing.
Oh yeah, we could do another show on basketball. I mean, and you can go on. I mean, Justice Winslow, De'Aaron Fox. I mean, my gosh. And then back in the day, Juwan McClellan with that Milby team that went 37-0 and won the national, were ranked number 1 in the nation. That was one of the greatest teams and greatest group of guys and coach and anything you'd ever want in a basketball. Daniel Jones from Daniel Gibson from Jones. Sorry. I mean, yeah, you could just go on with the basketball players. So we've been very fortunate to cover these guys over the years. and luckily it's just, Houston's just is a hotbed for all sports. You can just go on, and Cat Osterman and softball, and you look at all the great track guys we've had out of here, and baseball, and it's pretty amazing. So, but right now we're in football. So
yeah, we're looking at a guy.
back.
I'm looking at a guy right now that fouled off a pitch against Cat Osterman, right, Todd?
Yeah,
You fouled.
it was a moment of greatness, and I think that video is that it on it's available. It's out there on Facebook, and it may even be. I saw it not too long ago, but it was one of my great moments of my sporting career.
Yeah, no,
I had a foul tip off Cat Osterman. No big deal. And she made it easy. Back then the softball, the rules were different. The mound was closer. They changed the rules because these pitchers were so dominant. They brought it back like 4 feet and they lowered it. And you could nobody could. Remember we did that story with Cat Osterman. The infielder said they can just kind of sit down and hang out while she was pitching. There really wasn't anything for them to do.
yeah, it's just unreal. I'm a little frustrated because I just missed Cat Osterman. I just missed Vince Young.
You missed. Oh, that's right, because you were at 2000 and what year did you start with us?
I think I might have started working freelance for you in 2002 for a little bit, but 2003 is when I really got rolling with the show and High School Sports Live back in the day. And just a lot of fun times. And, I miss working with you, and I miss what we did over there. And I felt like, the best thing about what we did is we were, I think the people watching the show might not have understood it, but we were about as objective as anybody. So it wasn't a particular team that we would focus on. We didn't go to Katy North Shore nonstop. We tried to hit as many as we could, but more importantly, we hit all the sports. I mean, Todd, I'm so proud of the fact that it wasn't just football and basketball. We covered baseball, softball, volleyball. You still do that, but I mean, to cover all those sports and track and cross country and everything, we tried to get a little bit of everybody, even hockey occasionally, or a lacrosse story or something like that.
Yeah, it was the first show of its kind, I think, in the area and maybe in the state or beyond. An hour live Friday night at 11 o'clock and covering all sports. We'd have a team come in live. I remember the very first team we had on the show was the Madison Marlins. It was November 10th, 2000. The Madison Marlins came in after a big win at 11 at night. I don't think you could. It's not so easy to do anymore these days. But I forgot who they played, and that was a team that Vince Young was on, and head coach Ray Seals, legendary coach, one of the most beloved coaches of all time in Houston, certainly for HISD, and brought his guys in, and so we'd have teams run in crazy 11:30 at night. They'd be coming into the studio. Invariably they would get lost because they couldn't find our office building, and that was kind of expected every week. But eventually they got there. So it was a great time, and just and the great thing is when I get to see these athletes 15 20 years later, they all remember it. Hey, I was with you, you came to our school, and no matter if they're superstars now, they always kind of have that memory. So it's very rewarding to have been a part of that.
Yeah, I remember towards the end of our run there, Twitter was just getting started. This was all pre all this social media. YouTube was there, so we had YouTube, but I was telling the bosses, like, hey, yeah, we need to have a Twitter presence. We need to do stuff for Twitter. We got to do, and they were looking at me, Todd. I don't know if you remember this. They looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what are you talking about? This is nothing. It's not going anywhere. Whatever. And here we are. 13 years later, and it's still a big deal.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up. But yeah.
Yeah, if you want to follow Todd on Twitter, that sets me right up. I can set myself up here. It's at Todd Freed. It's at H-Town HSS for H-Town High School Sports. Remind everybody one more time when and where to catch your show every week.
All right, so Saturday night, Last year we were at 10:30. We've moved up 30 minutes. So I really like this time slot. It's right after the 9 o'clock news on CW 39. 10 p.m. Saturday night is the original airing of the show. We kick it off this week. We'll have highlights of a lot of big games. We talk about North Shore, the Woodlands, Dickinson and Tascasita, Crosby, C.E. King. One game and two teams I want to give kudos to. Shadow Creek and Manville will play for the first time ever this Friday night. So that's kind of a historic game. They're in the same school district. They've never played each other. So that's going to be one of the games to watch out for. I meant to mention that earlier, but better late than never. So anyway, so we'll have that, lots more. Saturday night at 10 p.m. And then the show replays Monday through Thursday on AT&T Sportsnet, typically right before Astros pregame shows or then in the Rockets around 5:30 or so. It varies by a half hour or so, but plenty of chances to see the show. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and all our content goes there as well.
H-Town High School Sports. It's where your future stars are born. It's where you can see people before they go to the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball. It's a great watch. Thanks so much for doing the show, Todd. Always fun to have you.
All right. Thanks for having me on, and we'll see you later. We'll see you at the games.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, you can support the show by subscribing on YouTube and commenting on the videos. Listen to Houston Sports Talk on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and Google. Don't forget to tell a friend and share our show on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.